Hello, guys. Welcome back to The Struggle with Candice Thompson. I'm Candice Thompson. This is when I wake up, it takes me a long time for my voice to get back to its natural state. I've got to work my way. When I wake up in the morning, I sound like Donald Sutherland. I'm like, for whatever reason.
What do you think that is?
No, it's just, I don't know. I just have more bass in my voice when I wake up. But I didn't just wake up either. I woke up at anyway, we'll get to that in a second. Let me just finish this fucking introduction. I hate the intro, guys. I hate it. I hate doing this. Welcome back to The Struggle with Candice Thompson. I'm Candice motherfucking Thompson. The Struggle used to be a podcast where I would have my guests, my friends on, and they would talk about things they're struggling with. But now the world is a shit show and people are sad and depressed. So we just talk about things that are light and try to keep it fun so people feel better about themselves. Okay? Will it ever go back to The Struggle? I don't know. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen in 20 minutes? I don't know. I can't make any promises, but we here and this is what we're dealing with. To my loyal listeners, thank you for coming back. To my new listeners, you're probably going to stop watching right after this because I have an attitude problem. But anyway, thank you for joining. You can follow me on Jokes by Candice on social media. If you have not subscribed, make sure you do that. Rate and review us on iTunes. And last but not least, tell somebody about The Struggle. If you listen to this regularly, tell somebody. Now I'm going to introduce my mustachy co-host, Mal Hall.
Hey, everybody. I'm back. I was going to say, if you're listening, just listening, the mustache is back in full effect. I have a website. It's unnecessary. I have social media. It's also unnecessary, but I would appreciate if you would just go to my Instagram and like a few things at Mal Hall and Mal Hall TV on YouTube. When I make videos, just watch them. That's it. Candice, who is our guest?
Oh, man. I'm so excited he's here because I haven't seen this man in a very long time because he's no longer in LA and it makes me sad. But he also was the very first guest on The Struggle when I first started this podcast. It was before Mal was even a part of it. This is when Jackie Fabulous was supposed to be my co-host, but then flaked so many times that I had to replace her. So Ramon, like she canceled the day of or some shit like that. And I was like, okay, Ramon, it's just gonna be you and me. And it was very entertaining. And now he's back. Everyone give it up for Ramon Rivas.
Hello.
Hello. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me. My website is Blazer Ramon, BLAZERRAMON.com. That has links to all my social, which is also blazerramon.com. Has my 2 albums that I released over the pandemic, links to like videos and podcasts and shit I've done. It's a one-stop shop for all your high Latino needs.
Wait, now I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Mal. I have a question though. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the handle Blazer, so that is weed related. You're not like a Chevy Blazer enthusiast.
No, I mean I wear a lot of sport coats.
That's what I was gonna ask. Is it because you like blazers? I'm a blazer. I wear blazers now.
I got bequeathed that name from the Lucas brothers because they're like big stoners and big wrestling people, and so they start calling me Blazer Ramon. And then they have a bunch of other ones like Mean Gene Smoker Land and a couple other like wrestling-based smoking things. But at the time, like all my social was Ramon Rivas II, and white people don't know how to spell nothing. So I just switched it to Blazer Ramon, which is easier to remember, but I think probably cost me like corporate work or like college gigs. You know what I'm saying?
No,
but,
I mean, or there's people like me who didn't even associate blazer with weed. I just don't even. I
could say trailblazer too, if that makes people comfortable.
There you go. Yeah, no, I believe it's cost you nothing.
I can't lose what I don't have.
So where do you live? Where do you live now? If you moved out of LA, where do you move to?
So I lived in LA from 2016 to the beginning of 2019. And I moved back to Lorain, Ohio, which is where I grew up. It's about a half hour west of Cleveland. Used to be like steel yard, shipyard, auto industry, and those all died since I've been alive. So now it's very like economically like
ravaged.
Dead?
Ravaged, urban decay, but it's still a city, but it feels like farmland, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely like a weird, like when the pandemic popped off and everyone's like, what if the economy doesn't come back and these places never open? I'm like, I've seen everything closed since I've been alive, so it's not a big deal. Like, I'm like, what are y'all worried about? Just get donuts somewhere else. Like, it's just such a weird, but it's one of those, you grow up in it, you normalize it. Other people are like, oh shit.
Yeah, Ramon's like, I've never had an economy. He's like, what's the big, why do we even need one?
Nah.
Wait, so is weed legal in Ohio?
No.
It's medicinal.
Yeah, but that's that's about it. I give it up, Ohio, because Cincinnati, right here.
I'm from down there.
I am, but
I'm sure Cincinnati has a similar vibe to Lorraine. I felt like Cincinnati's Lorraine if it never fell off.
Maybe. I can't say because I've never been to Lorraine, but Cincinnati, it had at one point, Mal disappeared again. It had I don't know about what's happening right now. I would say no one's moving anywhere, but there was a lot of young people that were coming to Cincinnati. There's a lot of like hot chefs that were young chefs, and like it's a decent place for people who just want to start a family, settle down, and if you're just a regular person, like there's nothing wrong. I make fun of Cincinnati, but there's really nothing wrong with it. Like
it's really pretty. It's a really pretty city. Like the artwork downtown is like so dope. There's like parks and stuff. They do farmers markets out there. It's nice.
Yeah, once they got rid of all the ghettos, once they scooped all those vermin out and replaced it with, trendy artistic.
After they designed it to make them.
Yeah. I didn't know this, but the person that designed the Brooklyn Bridge also designed the bridge that goes from Cincinnati to Covington, Kentucky.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was that on Dr. Bronner's bottle, on his manifesto?
No, I learned that when I was in Cincinnati last.
You know more about Cincinnati than I do. I don't know anything about any of the places I've ever lived. I've never, if you ask me anything about like historical landmarks, I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's there, it's been there. I think they're like, they just built that yesterday. I'm like, really?
That's a lot of people, and it's kind of sad in some ways because like Toni Morrison is from Lorraine, and I didn't know that till I was in high school. And I'm like, how is this Nobel Peace Prize and Pulitzer Award-winning author who's from this city doesn't have no statues, doesn't got no, you got an elementary school named after her. That's it.
That's it.
But it's like, if you know about it, you could be proud of it.
Right, for sure. See, I've always been a skeptic of hometown pride. I've been trying to figure out a way to make this into a joke, but I just don't really understand it. I could understand it if like you had a hand or like your family was like engineering and like you helped build it and you cultivated things in that town. But otherwise, like people who are so like ride or die for their town, like I used to live with somebody, he's from Detroit, and he would get so mad, even if I would just make a joke. Like he's from Detroit, and I said that it's Detroit shaped like a crack rock. He got so like it looked like he wanted to hit me. And if I was a dude, he probably would have. I'm not exaggerating. He got mad. And I'm like, that's a level of pride I've never felt in anything. Like you could make fun of anything that I'm affiliated with and I wouldn't care just because I'm like, it's a joke, first of all. But I have no, I'm just like, whatever.
A lot of the city pride is linked to sports, I would say. A lot of people take their city pride, link it to sports.
That's another thing I don't understand.
I don't get it either. Like I root for some teams, but when they lose, it doesn't ruin my day.
And you're not gonna loot. You're not gonna go outside and set something on fire.
When they win, when they win, I don't storm the streets.
No, that's what like when the Cavs won the championship, I was living in LA, so like I saw like the downtown just fucking swarmed with people climbing on buildings and shit. And I'm like, it was cool to see, but also there's a part of me and I'm like, man, I ride my bike down there all the time. I ain't never seen none of y'all motherfuckers down there. But there's this, like you said, it's attached to the sport, but they don't muster that. There's not that same thing behind like civic reform or like police reform or like any other thing. It's just like sports. It's like, because I used to be a big advocate for Cleveland, and I'm like, when you love something, you have to love all of it. So like, yeah, I love the Cavs and the Indians and the Browns, but I also think we need to fix the police department. I think there's a lot of fucking, like, East Cleveland's been bankrupt since the 80s, and Cleveland proper refuses to incorporate it because the East Side is mostly like fucking like poor Black people and people of color, or pockets of very rich white people. So it's just this weird, like, I don't know, this definitely has a duality to it. But I slowly realized, like, slowly over the years, I'm like, oh, no one, like, the way I care about this is not going to care about me, and people aren't going to, like, it's not. So I started just slowly, like, adjusting to, like, try to care about myself that much.
Yeah.
And how's that going, Ramon? Is that working at all?
Yeah, slowly. I mean, it's, you know, it's hard to build up your esteem and regard for yourself in a craft as a comedian. I'm sure y'all experience this too, where it's like the biases you have to headbutt against that are like, nah, but then you see like a mediocre white person get yes. And like, it's like we have equal credits, or they have less credits than me. Yeah. So it's like I'm still trying to be like, oh, I'm still good regardless. But like that, if you're wired on your success and value being from getting this thing, it's infuriating. It's so hard to do. So it takes a long time to like disassociate from that and like not build your value, because like when the pandemic happened, I operated on the margins of shit already. So like a couple clubs will fuck with me, but like it was mostly like DIY touring or going to New York or LA for like months at a time and like just hitting the indie scenes that don't pay you shit, but like, oh, this dude from Cleveland's funny, like getting respect, but like nothing financial. Well, it's because you're not wearing a sombrero, Ramon, and you're not trans, and you're not checking enough boxes. I don't fit like, but it's also weird because like then I'll have clubs in the middle of the country where I'm like, hey, can I open for this comic? Because I saw that there was no one scheduled to open. I'm around, and they're like, oh, can you not piss off his audience at all? And it's just like, I've worked for y'all for like 10 years, and I've been on TV, like. Yeah, like these are just white people, but because of my skin, they're like, well, you might make them mad. Yeah. And it's like,
see, and that's the whole like we tiptoe around having to, and what it's just being an artist in, you know, in your a minority, like you tiptoe around because you have to think about what is gonna make these white people feel okay and not piss them off. But that's just come from it, like that was a product of all this wokeness too. You know what I'm saying? Like there was a time where like white people would just take what you said and be like, that was a joke, that's funny, regardless of what race, religion, whatever. But now it's like, now that we've entertained and made safe spaces for people, it's like, why do I have to care about your feelings? I don't understand that. Like,
I barely care about my own feelings.
My own feelings.
About you.
Like, I'm making fun of myself.
Yeah. Dude, I've had people complain about self-deprecating jokes. Like, there's nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with you.
I was making myself the butt of the joke. How could that hurt your feelings?
Well, no, but that's why I have so many problems with this wokeness, because it's fake, and it's so self-absorbed that now everyone is so important that even when you're not even talking about them, if it affects them in any way or makes them feel uncomfortable, and now that's your problem. You have to deal with it. How are we supposed to thrive in this type of environment?
Well, I feel like that vibe comes more from audience members, I feel like. You know what I'm saying? Which is fine. Like if this is making you mad, you ain't gonna like me. So get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
But that doesn't affect things as much as the club think like the manager. I'm grateful the manager said that to me instead of just thinking it and then not booking me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
For
and
sure.
So then I did that weekend and I smashed. And like I was talking about when I talked about race, poverty, and sexual power dynamics. That's what the fuck I talk about. And that's the underlayer. But on top, I'm like, oh, all this weird shit I've done. But like talked about going to Scotland and people processing me as white and then talking about race and whiteness from that experience. And so again, this generic white comedian who's like got a hat, how like that. Like he's nothing, like he's not a prophet. He's not a prophet. Like he's not like, you know what I'm saying? He's just a regular ass dude. Yeah. And his crowd's just regular ass people. And I did what I would always normally do. And even though I'm talking about these, like, the audience loved it to the point, like the owner came over and he was like, I got a lot of good compliments about you this weekend, like doing a great job. I was like, oh, thanks. Yeah. But if the manager had just thought it instead of saying it, he would have just put some, I call them parsley on a plate, where you put someone on a show and they're not going to affect the palate in any way. Yeah. So it's just like, all right, cool, boom. Yeah. And that's harder to battle against than an audience being like, you hurt my feelings. And so, okay, well, I don't think about your feelings, but do you want to talk about it? Because I mean, we can talk for like a minute or two. All right, cool. Well, you have a good night. Because a lot of times people just like, you tapped into something that but like they've never faced that reality. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people are so coddled.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's a problem. Like it's a double-edged sword, I think, because the crowd is our boss as comedians, and they're like the boss of the comedy club as well, you know? So the comedy club wants their patrons have a good time and come back. But instead of just making sure that the comedians are talented and funny, they're saying bullshit like, can you please don't hurt the feelings? Can you don't hurt the feelings of these fans?
Well, they're also thinking of the dumbest person in the crowd.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're thinking of the people who have a Confederate flag.
Right.
Or the people who don't look at race. Like I don't see color. Right. It's like both of those are dumb people. Like both of them. They're equally dumb. Right. But that's who you're being like, well, let's make sure, because those are the ones they think go and watch comedy and drink and eat. And it's like, most of the people who go watch comedy are like,
smart.
They're kind of broke, but they're like down to spend money, but it's not going to be on like top shelf shit. I'm just going to drink a bunch of Bud Light.
Right.
I
also think that people who like stand-up comedy, like, are, I'm not going to say they're all intelligent, but like that's an art form that I think a specific type of person really enjoys. And then to actually go out of your house to go see it live, as opposed to just watching it on your phone, those are the dumb ones. Like if you're entertained by, YouTubers and whatever on your phone, that's a different demographic. But people who like really appreciate the art of stand-up comedy, because comedy is smart. Like you have to be intelligent to know how to write a joke. Yeah. And you can tell you can tell there's an appreciation from certain groups. Now, I'm not speaking across. It's not a blanket statement that I can't say that all audiences are smart, but a lot of them are. I think we underestimate them on a lot of occasions.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of the clubs wind up like, instead of like comedy thrives in like the same places that jazz thrives. It's hard to do jazz in front of like 400 people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's so like once you get to that point where you're expecting that many people to come, it's like, all right, well now you're getting people who like, I just want to go eat dinner. Let's go celebrate something. Let's go. Like it's not about what you're watching. It's like people who go to the movies and want to sit down and play on their phone. It's like that's not what you're supposed to do here.
Right.
Yeah.
What were you about to say, Mel?
I forgot.
Hilarious. Also the times that that people come to shows also says a lot about the person.
Oh.
Like that, if you come, usually the later crowds are already drunk and fucked up, and they're not going to be as attentive. And I wouldn't say they're the brightest. They're the sharpest tools in the box.
Right. I was gonna say when crowds are bad in the last like year or two, I've started asking, like, by round of applause, how many people are at a comedy show for the first time ever? And when the majority of people are there for the first time, those are like the worst crowds, I think.
Oh.
Because they don't understand. Like, people that go to comedy shows, there's a certain kind of person that loves stand-up comedy, so they'll go to just see a comedy show. They don't care who's on the lineup because they enjoy the art and they want to hear, different perspective. But then there's people that have never been to a comedy show that are just going to see Joe Coy, and they know him from YouTube, and they're like, I just want to see it live. I don't care about comedy. I'm going to see this person. Right. And those are the people that the comedy club is looking out for, unfortunately, instead of looking out for the other patrons who appreciate it and get better security to shut the fuck up of these other people. They tell us to like be nice.
Right.
Well, the few good clubs do a good job of like, all right, we're going to bring in a Joe Coy, but we're going to pair them with someone local or regional who's like here all the time to then retain some of those people.
Yeah.
But clubs don't really think in a community sense in a lot of these smaller cities.
Right.
Yeah.
Some do, but it's like so few and far between. Like that's the one thing I wish for is like uniformity. And like if I want a job at McDonald's, every McDonald's, can I get an application? You fill out the application and then you give it to them. And then they're like, all right, well, we're not hiring right now, but like maybe later. Or like, oh, come pop on the fries right now.
Yeah.
But there's no rhyme or reason in comedy. Like you gotta like ask your buddy when they're there, like, hey, who's the person there? And then like, what's their email? And then like, okay. Or like tell your reps and then have your reps try to like leverage their bigger clients into bullying you. And it's like,
what if McDonald's was like that though? Like if you wanted to get into McDonald's, you're like, bro, could I get 5 minutes on the fries? Like if I could just, can I do a guest spot?
Yo, I'm gonna salt them up just right.
I used to work at McDonald's and it actually is like that. There was a rotation. No. I did work at McDonald's. It was my first job. I lasted 2 weeks. Now, before I joined.
Is that good or bad? Does that make you feel good or bad about yourself?
Well, I was 16. I only got a job there because I had two friends that worked there. My friend Deshaun and my friend Michelle worked there. And they just were making money and they were older than me. All my friends were like a year older than me because I had skipped a grade back in the day. So everyone got to do things before me. Even in college, everyone got to drink before me. Everyone that was in my grade. So anyway, I was just excited to be like, oh, making money finally. But then I realized I was like, I don't want to do this. They called me in at like 6 o'clock in the morning one time. I wasn't on the schedule on a Saturday. And I was like, so I went in that day and then they never heard from me again. I was on the schedule for like the next 2 weeks and I just never showed up again.
But you could have just been like, no. And then been like, okay.
You're absolutely right. But for some reason, I was a habitual job abandoner. I job abandoned many, and I'm not proud of that, but it's just what I did. It's what I felt. I guess like me fleeing the scene was like, oh, they'll be like, oh, she's just a teenager. That's what teenagers do. You can't rely on them. And then they weren't going to affect me in any way. It's not like their recommendations were going to affect my jobs that I got after college. So I was like, fuck it.
You never asked.
Like McDonald's is gonna slide off the resume. It ain't gonna be on the resume.
I never worked there. What are you talking about?
You never asked the McDonald's manager for a letter of recommendation for your future employment?
Well,
it'll be on the top.
Now I would have to because I've been out of the work game for so long. I
hope McDonald's tries to hire you for a commercial and then someone is like, wait a minute. He no-showed 4 days in a row.
Candice, her last name isn't Thompson, is it? From Cincinnati, Ohio? Chester Road?
I hope you get booked for a McDonald's commercial and halfway through the shoot, you just fucking leave.
Think about like if I were to ever get booked on like a commercial, like because I'm vegan now, so it's like I think about what I want to even compromise.
You could do McDonald's. You could do an
morals.
Impossible Whopper commercial.
That's Burger King, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You'd have to help Burger King comes at you.
Maybe. I don't condone any of those big fast food corporations because it's all poison. So I don't like having any part of that. And not even just on a meat level, but on just like a you're killing people level, like regularly. So like I just can't. I'm like, would I do that? And it's like, yeah, they would pay good money, but I go back and forth like, oh, I don't know, I wouldn't feel good about myself.
To be clear, those people are killing themselves. McDonald's isn't helping, but people have a choice to not eat them.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't have money now. A lot of fast food restaurants are in poor areas where they can't afford better. Like, come on. Like, you got to be a little bit more sympathetic to people who don't, number one, have the education to know better about. They don't know that it's poison. And the way they market it, and they market specifically to children with their Happy Meals. They know what they're doing. It's commercials, and it's not good. They're not, and they know what they're doing.
I will say I didn't eat fast food for like 3-4 years, and I've eaten it a bunch this past year just because like I'll have like a little bit of money in my bank account and I'll be like, I go eat like 5 cheeseburgers for $5.
Yeah.
Let's ride.
Yeah.
Just every once in a while, but it's just like, because then you go like, all right, I'll just go to the grocery store and spend $10, but you want to spend a little more, and it's quicker to think in that short term.
You just want to get full. You're like, I'm hungry now. What's going to do this for the smallest amount of money? Like, it's real. And there's a reason why health food is expensive, because they don't want people to have it. It's insidious the way they keep people sick in this country. So, I mean, it's all by design, and there's a specific reason why those fast food restaurants are in specific places, So I would.
But I mean, it also goes to like the things we are able, the way we give assistance to people is not like my nephew works for the food bank, and so they wind up giving a bunch of mostly staples, but they're kind of in that unhealthy, like hyper processed manner because it lasts longer, and then they're able to give them like a bag of fresh shit.
Right. That's good.
But that's because we're not wired to give fresh shit like at the frequency with which you need it.
Yeah, no, it's I gave to a homeless shelter sometime this summer. They had put out something on Instagram saying like, we're short on canned goods, anything that you can do to help. So I dropped off a bunch, but even just, I knew that's what they asked for, but in my head, I'm like, canned shit is not good. Like the toxins that are in can, but you can't just show up there with fresh vegetables. So it's like, what can you do?
But a lot of times you can show up, like if you give them money, they can get fresh shit.
Oh,
like,
okay.
People are wired to like, oh, a food bank, let me give them food. It's like, no, you give them money because they have deals with a lot of vendors who give them like bulk.
Okay,
access.
well that's good to know.
But it's like that. Those are the type of things that like learning that it's like, oh, okay, like.
I wish people weren't afraid to cook at home. I think a lot of people don't know how to cook because we grew up dirt poor. We were also vegetarian growing up, so fast food wasn't really an option. But we would get fucking a sack of beans and a sack of rice, and that
eat for the week.
Yeah, you could eat for many weeks for cheap too. Like each meal is super cheap when you break it down that way.
Yeah.
But it just takes that effort and the know-how to like cook. Like if you like most people, you hand them a bag of rice and a bag of beans, they just look at it like,
what do I
put this in the microwave, or like what happens? What do I do? And it's like it's very simple. These are,
they need to teach people. I mean, that, and again, this is by design too, but like they don't teach people life skills in school. Like there are certain things that we should have had as fundamental classes that are taught in school, like just how to financial classes, teach people about credit cards and how to use those properly, or how not to use them at all, about how to stock market, how to invest in real estate, how to make your own money grow, but also
calculate
cooking.
interest.
Yes, like they don't. And again, that's not
condoms. Condoms, how to put them on correctly.
Well, okay, you didn't have sex ed course?
What?
Well, that explains your child.
We had pregnant kids in middle school, son.
Oh, of course. Did you have pregnant kids in middle school, Mal? Or was that just me and Ramon in Ohio?
No. We for sure had middle school kids that were pregnant. We lived in the country, dude. There's nothing to do out here except math and sex.
And they don't. And there's no convenience store around to get the condoms.
No. Not at all.
You gotta make your own sheepskin condom.
It feels nice, but it's hard to make. You know?
Mine out of burlap. Burlap?
Make sure you double bag that burlap. It still has holes in both layers.
But it acts like a colander. It catches.
Did you call it a colander?
Is that what it's called? The shit that you
a colander?
Colander.
However, I don't know. I know what the letters are. I don't know how you pronounce them.
We're talking about cooking. Ramon actually clearly has no idea what he's doing in the kitchen. He calls it a colander. He made it sound like a commander.
I know how to cook.
Oh, do you?
Both my parents work, so I've known how to cook since I was like 7.
And you just now learned how to say colander?
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting turn of events. You should have a cooking show where you just mispronounce everything that's in the kitchen.
And just make everyone like a little bit mad the whole episode.
So you're gonna start off by taking your sauce pot. Hold on. What?
Your sauce poop.
And you're gonna
call it a sauce.
Gently mix your soup with your spatula. Huh?
And then you take this iron skillet where you salt the onions and the garlic. Oh my God. You should do that. I'm not even kidding.
Okay.
What was I gonna? Oh, I wanted to ask you because Chappelle was doing shows in Ohio. Did you ever make it down to any of those, Ramon?
No, a couple of my friends went. One of them brought me back a mask. I was also doing outdoor shows in Ohio at like the same time.
Yours didn't make the headlines though.
No, I mean I did it like a little bit locally. But like I just like the pandemic happened and I had randomly like done like 2 headline gigs recently, so I had more money than I'm used to having, and that just tells you how poor I'm used to being. When 2 weekends of headlining comedy clubs, I'm like, oh, a pandemic, I'll be fine.
Meanwhile, a year later,
and so
we're still in a
literally, like in April, I was talking to Joelle and she was like, you didn't file for assistance? I was like, no. She's like, you better, just because they're giving extra money. I was like, oh, all right. And then I started filing back to March because like I could, like March 14th was like the last thing. And then in May, I got like 1 check that was like all the weeks plus the thing. So I was like, oh shit. So I like bought a car off of Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
I bought a speaker system and a PA. And I got all the shit, and then the shit to power it from my car. And then I just got a permit to do a show at the park down the street from me.
That's great.
And then I was doing that on Sundays and then using my unemployment money to give comics like $10 spot pay.
That's great.
Just because I'm like, even though it's a free show, I want to, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to utilize free labor. Like that's why none of us ever get paid, is because no one's ever like, well, I'm going to pay you.
Right.
Like, I'll take a little L if I need to, but I'm going to pay you.
But I'm gonna pay. Yeah, because people don't even understand. Like even that $10 helped. That was the gas it took me to get here. So yeah.
Gas, or I can get something to eat on the way. I can stop and buy some cabbage if you're Candice, or like a sad cheeseburger or 5 if you're me. I
gotta be eating dry ass cabbage.
I don't know. I figured you'd know how to like sauce it up and make it.
It's pronounced cabbage.
Yeah, the not paying people on shows is like, I think that's a flagrant foul when comedians start shows and they charge money for tickets, and then they don't pay the comedians.
Yeah.
Like, you're a comic. You're
a
comic.
Yeah.
Well, but I also wanted to figure out how do I was trying to make a socialistic model of comedy, because we're so used to engaging it in like under like capitalism, and like I only do comedy when this club gives me access to doing comedy.
Yeah.
And so like I've always like kind of DIY shit. So I was like, all right, now I have all this shit. And after my first show, I got 15 emails from all men, almost all white, who were like, hey, I heard you got a good show. Can I do your show? And I'm like, I don't know none of y'all. Yeah. But that reminded me, that's like, oh shit. So all the comics of color, all the female comics, I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Just so you know, you're more than welcome. It's not much, but I got gas money for you whenever you come out. Boom.
Yeah.
Just because we're not wired the same way to like, oh, I deserve access to this thing just because I exist and you exist.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like,
Yeah. There is a. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's when I try to have that approach with comedy clubs, I come off as like and it's like, oh, I thought that's what that dude did too.
Right. And they do though, but there is like people talk about like that, because there's a lot of conversations about race stuff happening right now. But like we joke about, there's this confidence that white men have, and it's like, obviously there are white men that don't have confidence. And yes, there are women that also have extreme confidence as well. Like, and that's not specific. It's not an individual basis, but I have noticed working, like writing for television, the people that reach out to me that I don't even know, that have the balls to be like, hey, can you get me an interview? Could you take this writing sample? They're all white men. I
also think it's a socioeconomic thing, because it's just like you've never grown up without the main being prime consideration for like anything. So your wants and needs are high. Like I think we talked about this on the first episode, but like more in regards to me, because I'm come from lower socioeconomic, I lower my sense of wants and needs so that I can feel some sense of abundance. And so it's like that gap in expectation is what entitlement is.
For sure, but there are white poor people too. So like, I don't want to make a blanket statement and say that that's where that comes from for every white person, especially white men. But I think there's like, we as, minorities, we operate certain ways because we know what that stereotype is of us. So we don't want to offend. We don't want to come off as angry. We don't want to come off as whatever. So we don't even know if we can, if we can push the boundaries like that, even when there's opportunities where we probably could and nothing would happen except something good for us. We limit ourselves because in our heads, we already have that mindset of we're not going to be able to get away with this like this other person.
In our heads,
may or may not even be true.
It's in the wiring.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? To adapt when you're the only person of color at like an office job, all right.
For sure.
When you're the only fucking comic of color on the lineup, you're like, but I gotta be okay. It's like a weird, but like occupying the amount of space you're supposed to and not apologizing for it,
right,
is like a thing I think we all could benefit from. But it's also like, just doing that in my body will impact someone completely differently than when it happens in Candice's body or when it happens in Mal's body. So even there's something to account for beyond that. Right. But that's the first part of it.
Right. To me, it's just, I would love to know what it's like to not have in my head. Like, I would love to know what it feels like to go perform somewhere without in my head thinking before I go on stage, knowing that, like, how is this audience going to perceive me because I am a woman? And how also, the first thing that pops in people's head when I start talking to was like, what is she? Like, what? And then my jokes get affected certain ways because they're trying to figure me out. And there's like, when you should just be listening to what I'm saying instead of trying to be like, well, exactly. And also, just looks come into play just in general. But I would wonder what it would feel like to not have to think about that at all and just walk up on stage because you fulfill the image of what people expect to see when they go to a comedy club. I would love to have that freedom. Yeah.
I had a slice of that in Scotland because people processed me as white, so there was nothing for me to
overcome,
not assimilate to, but like have my identity established on its adjacency to. Like people did, like the main thing was like, oh, you're American, okay, and they'd accept it. And so like going on stage without having to break past that thing because they're not thinking about that thing. Because whiteness over there is different than whiteness over here. So I started like seeing shit. So then my brain was making me think about things differently. But like I was able to do it like that for like a month in this. It was very interesting.
There's a freedom that comes with that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, but I also knew it was dangerous to get used to that because if I got used to that and then came back to America with that energy, I'm still big and brown. Like that's still like Tamir Rice got shot for having a gun in an open carry state, and it was a toy gun.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and I've been the size of like me and my dad wore the same size clothes when I was in 5th grade, and then I got bigger than him. So I've been the size of a man since I was a child, and so like.
You look normal size, man. Are you a giant?
I just been big. I like when I was in kindergarten, I was the size of a 3rd grader. When I was a 3rd grader, I was the size of a fucking 6th grader. When I was a 5th grader, I was the size of a man.
Wow.
So that like, but that's always like back burner shit that is like hard to explain. But then all the social unrest that happened is like that being like, oh, all y'all finally see this shit that like I always had but like couldn't explain.
Yeah.
But like now y'all get it. Like that was relieving in a weird way because I was able to like release that anxiety or justify that anxiety.
Right. Well, I don't know all I know is I don't know what's going to happen because with all these identity politics bullshit, like it's just going to make our jobs harder. Like with putting people in boxes and groups, like we're never going to achieve that freedom. Like, I don't know what the solution is either, but I know that immediately judging somebody, it's like we're regressing. Like that's what, like, there was a point in time where it was easier to just say what was on your mind. But now it's like, I feel like there's just more just like immediate people look at you and it's even worse from people like me who don't fit in any box. You know, when you look at me, you're like, what? So it's like, I don't know what to do with you, but it's like,
that ambiguity.
Yeah. But now it's like, everything is about identity and who are you sleeping with and blah, 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 blah. It's like, everybody's just, and if you don't fit in that box of what they expect of you, then it's like these expectations that people have of you, it's just making things really muddy and complicated. And I don't like it in any way, shape, or form. I think it's too much.
Well,
we've gone too far.
I feel like that's kind of the touches on like trying to get into comedy clubs. It's like sometimes just existing in your body, just talking is a political statement.
Yeah, for sure.
Your racially ambiguous female body. And so now that person who's thinking of the dumb Confederate flag person and the fucking, I forget what the other side of it, like anti-mask.
That was I don't see color, the colorblind people.
Oh yeah. So it's like you're catering to them. Oh, well, this, just anything you say, like, I don't know what you are, so now I gotta think about that, now I gotta do this. Like, that's not, their discomfort with you, like you getting put in front of them, that possible discomfort they figured out how to make their discomfort our issue again with identity politics.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because that's definitely, like, that was a buzzword as soon as, like, there started to be a, like, I remember when I was a kid, like, Watson, like, Rodney King, that was the shit I was alive for. But, like, hearing the call for accountability for, like, look at this thing we can see, like, that's not a thing, that's when that language started happening.
Right.
Because it's like, I don't want to come for race, so, like, this is all just identity politics. And it's like, just kidding. There's like a couple books, an indigenous people's history of the United States, an African American and Latinx history of the United States, and a Black woman's history of the United States. And it just runs, they're like textbooks, so broken down real small, but it just tells each one's a different perspective. Like the indigenous one is like, when you ask people what the United States looked like when it was first founded, they'll say from coast to coast, and that's the mindset of Manifest Destiny. But there was like a federation of nations that existed, and that slowly, like, they would negotiate with like these French and Spanish and English territories, and then the settlers would go over the border, kill, once the balance of white people was greater than the balance of Indians, they would annex the territory, and then it will become a state. And that's how it went all the way to the coast. And most of the, like Andrew Jackson and shit, most of the early politicians who like made their bones as in politics were in like the Seminole Wars, which they went to Florida to capture escaped property, which was slaves. And so like you reading that first book is like, oh shit, like I never thought about it in those terms, where like a lot of then the whole wars with like Mexico and Haiti saw America declare its independence, and they were like, oh, we're going to do it too. The only difference was they also abolished slavery, and America didn't. And so suddenly American liberty had to differentiate itself from this other shit that was happening.
Right.
So it's like, when you go back and read it, you're like, oh shit, it's like baked into the system. But then when you start to say, hey, is this baked into the system? They're like, well, now you're just identity politicking. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Because that's what the second book talks about, is like, it should have been like a hemispheric revolt against imperialism, and instead America just turned into an imperialist thing and then just went whoosh.
Right.
And because in school you learn, like I learned about the Underground Railroad as a south to north thing. And in the second book you learned that there was routes that went to the Caribbean, and there was routes that went through Mexico into South America. And that accounts for the diaspora. That accounts for the diaspora of blackness everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
But you don't learn about that, so it's like,
right.
Reading those books really like makes you see shit in like, oh, this isn't new. Like none of this is new. Like there's a part in the second book where it's talking about, I think it was Herbert Hoover, and he was running and he was blaming all this shit on Mexico, and like saying that like and putting all this money into big business, and then the fucking economy collapsed. And it's like I'm reading that as that same shit was happening with fucking Trump talking all this shit about Mexico. It's interesting when you start to like fill that shit in. For
sure. I mean, it's blatantly clear who's high right now, and it is because Ramon is gone all types of deep. You didn't think you would learn nothing on today's episode of The Struggle. I actually go out of my way to not teach anybody anything on this podcast. My goal is to make people dumber when they come and watch this and listen to it.
But it's like, you could be dumb. Like, as you see, I'm smoking weed. Like, I'm about to play video games and shit, but I'm still able to be like aware.
What if for anybody who wants to know what books those were, what were the books?
An indigenous people's history of the United States. That's one book. And then an African American and Latinx history of the United States is a second book. And then a Black women's history of the United States is the third book. And it just goes from pre-America through now from that group's perspective, and like there's fucking the whole back of the book is like annotations, and be like, you can keep researching if you want. But those books do a really good job of like, filling in a lot of that, gaps that like just, from regular education. This year I taught myself that, and then I taught myself how to like what interest is and like how to like pay down debt, like all that type of shit. I've tried to teach myself this year.
Yeah.
Everything except how to pronounce colander properly.
Colander, Candice.
What are you had to say now?
What video games are you playing?
I've been playing NBA 2K 21, and then I just bought the Madden 21 just because it was cheap.
Sports game.
Yeah, and then I was playing the Dragon Ball Z game for a little bit, but it got kind of boring.
Yeah.
And I was playing Red Dead Redemption for a while, but that got boring. And then
all right.
I don't have
everything's become boring in a pandemic because you just do
so
much of it.
I don't have enough hard drive space to download like Call of Duty, so I don't have
that,
which is the one everyone plays.
Are you done with video game questions, Mal?
Yep, we can move on.
Perfect. I wanted to, because I know nothing about video games.
He was on this super deep tangent, and then he was like, well, I'm going to play video games after this. And I'm like, what kind of video games is a guy that is also into this deep shit? What is he playing?
He's playing the Underground Railroad. Like, what? It's a video game?
Underground Railroad Tycoon.
Railroad 2K. What?
Escape from Slavery 4.0. I created my own Harriet Tubman. Jeez, right?
I wanted to ask you, Ramon, because when you came on the podcast, which was probably, when did I start this podcast? I don't even know what year that was. It was definitely like, it may be 3 years ago now.
LA, so it was like 2016.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe like 3 years ago now. So when you came on the podcast and we talked about your struggle was it not knowing if you were a fuckboy or being self-aware that you were a fuckboy? I can't remember specifically.
The awareness of what that means, the impact of that.
The impact of fuckboyness.
Yes.
Now, are you in the same place, or 3 years now, or have we made any progress with the fuckboydom?
All right, it depends how you look at it. Because
depends on who you ask.
No. What I mean by that is, so I was, I think I talked in the other one about how I was pretty much just like a hoe, and I was just operating in casual sex with like very little like financial or emotional equity. Yeah. So I'm out here being a fuckboy with like nothing to offer. Right. Because I was like broke, live with my family. I don't have a job, but I do comedy and like I ran my own show. So that in and of itself is like, ooh, what's this dude? But that's not based on me. That's based on my social position. And so if I'm finessing you from a social position, that can make you feel some sort of way if there was only the finesse. Because you're looking at like, oh, this like, let's build. Where like at the moment of hookup, it's like, hey, I'm not looking for anything, but we can hang out. And it's like, that's cool. I'm establishing that as my ceiling. And women will be like, oh, okay, that's cool. I'm not looking for anything either. And that's their floor. And so then they're expecting to build from there. And it's like, there's no
I told you. Right.
There's no falsehood, but there was a lack of communication of expectations and like what this means past this point.
Right.
Right.
And I just, as a woman, I obviously can't speak for all women, but I am curious, was that with every woman that you messed with, that you felt like, even though they said, I'm not looking for this, you felt like, oh, but there were going to be expectations of growth at some point? Was that every woman that you dealt with, or just some of them?
I mean, I don't know, because it's like a lot of it was, for a while, was like Tinder dates and hooking up from that. So it's like, I don't know what your expectation is on a hookup app.
Right.
For more. And like, it's slowly like, went from like OkCupid, where it's like they had boxes where you could like, I'm looking for friendship, long-term relationship, short-term relationship, casual sex. So you could check which. So I just had casual sex because I had all of these other three in abundance. I'm good. And so then you hear that Tinder's for hooking up. Like, oh, if you're just looking for hookup, people get on Tinder. So it's like, all right, so you get on Tinder. But then that becomes a dating. Like, it's just interesting. So it's like everyone's like lonely, but in completely different ways. So anyways.
Wait,
so
I have a question. I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Was Tinder always just the hookup app, or did that evolve into
it was originally the hookup, like
that's all it ever was meant for, was hooking.
All right, look at the design concept. You're
I've never been on
2
Tinder.
miles away from each other, and you find each other attractive.
That's like Grindr.
Yes, that's what Tinder is modeled off of. Or
Grindr was okay. I didn't know which one.
But I'm saying it's the same mentality.
Okay.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This is hooking up. And so the girl I'm with now, who's my
girlfriend,
I call it, she's my long-term sex companion. And
the hoops that y'all go through to just call her your girlfriend. Like, you come up with any other name.
You know what I'm saying?
My LTSG or CS.
She's my primary partner, but we're in an open relationship. So you know what I'm saying?
So you can have sex with other people.
She's my girlfriend, but it's open. It just doesn't fit the standard social definition of that. So I'm like, this is what it is.
Right. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, she has the way I describe. She has emotional tenure. Like the way you get.
All of these descriptions are hilarious.
But they're real.
Emotional tenure. No, I believe it. It's just funny to me, but I believe in. Look, there's a lot of nuance to relationships, and not everything that's traditional works for everybody. So, like, do what works for you. So it's just funny.
Now, mindful Ramon, any new prospective person of interest, I'm like, hey, this is what I have. You know what I'm saying? And like, it's been.
He shows a PowerPoint presentation.
Look at, I'm fully stocked.
I bust out a little clicker. I'm like, okay, if you know, slide one. But she's a girl who's like, she's one of the first girls I fooled around with.
Yeah.
So she's just been
in life.
Like, this is in life, because
y'all go way back. Oh.
So she was in the first few years, and then she's just been around since. And like, I'm normally like, this is the longest I've been in one spot since 2009.
Y'all
since then, I've always like been gone for chunks of the year. Right. But it's also like, I might have to leave if I get an email.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's such a hard. So it's like, I care about you and I love you, but I'm not going to tell you that. But
that's so fucked up, Ramon. You've been knowing this woman for years. Does she know?
But you know it.
Do you know? Just say it. There's nothing wrong with saying it. It's not going to change anything.
I know. But it's
just good to hear.
Yeah. So it's like, I am at a point where I'm also, I always suffer from feeling inadequate. And like, even though I'm at this place of, I'm a guest on The Struggle with Candice, Thompson, and Mal, I am doing this at my dad's house in my childhood bedroom that I live in, and my dad is across the hall. So I'm on a government, and I'm on government assistance. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm still a fuckboy, for lack of a better phrase. I got a brand new mattress, but there's no box.
It's like it's still on the floor.
Directly on the floor. So I'm not, because the box spring I had was like, the middle of it was sinking, so it was fucking like, the mattress was too soft.
Yeah.
So I gotta, get a new one. But it's
got a new one too for the same reason. I was doing so much fucking, it made a dent.
No, I'm just fat. I've been fat. That's a 20-year-old box spring. So I've just been like, my heavy ass middle's just been in the middle of the bed.
Well, it's even been longer than that because you've been a grown ass man since you were 3. So
this is a heavy 20 years.
Ramon, you've literally imprinted upon your box spring. That is yours for life. Not many people get to bond with a box spring like that.
Yeah.
Wait,
so
Mal,
it's like.
Wait, yeah. time out. Mal, do you have to go?
You have to go soon. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to look at more houses, and they're like an hour away. So I have to.
Yeah, no. So like what? Like right now you have to leave, or
what time is it? What time?
Oh no, we're almost done.
Yeah. What time is it?
It's 12:16. Yeah, we're almost done. I didn't know if I should say hard out now, or can we just
12:20.
12:20. Perfect.
Yeah.
4 minutes.
Cool.
4 minutes.
What were you about to say, Ramon? Was it mattress related?
I was just gonna say, so like I'm aware of, like I've read enough to be aware of all these dynamic things and like all this, like, you know, another book I read is like It Didn't Start With You and The Body Keeps the Score. Like all these like.
What's that about?
Interesting books. They're about how like I'll give you the quick description is like in laboratory mice, they will conduct experiments where they'll like light a vanilla candle and then shock all the mice. And the next time they'll light a vanilla candle, shock all the mice. And then those mice will have kids and they won't do anything. And then those mice will have kids and they'll light a vanilla candle and all the mice will cower because it is in their fight or flight DNA that this smell is dangerous. Humans have the same thing. They used to call it junk DNA. They're like, these are things that make you look like you look, but the rest of this is just junk DNA. But like, that's all your like fight or flight or like different shit you have in you.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is like generational trauma is what those books talk about. So those are interesting. So it's like, I'm where I am now, more aware of the past, if that makes sense. So better.
Oh no, he froze.
Did Ramon freeze?
It's a great picture though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that as an excuse for when I flee my next relationship. Is I'm gonna say, well, you know, they lit some vanilla candles around my great-great-grandmother and they shocked her. And so now I have intimacy issues.
Sorry.
Well, I wish, is he, he's rebooting. And then I'm not gonna edit this. I'm gonna leave this in because this is just too much work. He's getting back in. But do you have to leave right now, Mel?
Yeah, I have to go.
Okay. It's 12:18. You said 12:20.
I mean, Carlene's texting me. Status ?
Fine.
Look at.
I guess I'll just sing. I'll sing when you leave before Ramon gets back in. I'll just sing to kill time.
Today, after we see our houses, I am gonna go to Target and buy a new colander though, just for the funny of it. That when he said colander, I was like trying to figure out what he was talking about. And when you went, do you mean colander? That shit was fucking hilarious.
I wasn't gonna say anything because I didn't want to make him feel stupid. But then I was like, he's not gonna feel stupid. I was like, if I mispronounce something, I want people to correct me because I'm like, I don't want to continue saying it that way. My question is, how many people has he said that in front of that didn't say shit?
Didn't say shit. I'm gonna call it colander for the rest of my life.
For the rest of my life and see who will correct you.
Yeah, just for that small piece of joy that it brought me.
Well, have fun on your house hunting.
Thank you. And
I said hello.
We'll do, and we'll see you soon. To all the listeners.
Oh, Ramon's back in. Just say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, Mal. Okay, so Mal had to leave. It's okay. Mal had to leave, and then now you're back. I was like, am I gonna have to? I'm going to have to edit this video now. And I was like, I'm not going to edit this video. So it worked out perfectly. But anyway, we do have to wrap up. Do you have any closing thoughts, Ramon? Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Fucking tried to like, you know, like I've definitely tried to be more responsible within my irresponsibility.
That's good.
And what I mean by that is like, in October, I gave someone some piece of advice that I would just give anybody, and they're in a position, they just sent me money. So I was like, oh shit, dope. And so I was like, hell yeah, I'm about to get a new Xbox. I'm gonna get the new Xbox when it comes out. Yeah. Boom, we're gonna be gaming. Bow. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, you know what? Let me buy myself a rowing machine instead.
Yeah.
So I bought a rowing machine, and it's in my room. I'll be doing it every day.
Yes.
And then I just started like I do yoga with Joelle on Zoom. Like,
oh, nice.
And that just gave me the tools to like I can do daily yoga myself. And my dad bought me an Apple Watch, so like since I got this, every day I hit 800 active calories between like yoga and rowing, and walking around the park.
That's
and
fantastic.
So it's just like a little bit, but that just doing that has helped my anxiety a lot.
That's great.
And my like if you made a Venn diagram of my loneliness, my horniness, and my anxiety.
I actually did make a Venn diagram of that earlier this week.
For most of my life was just a complete circle.
Yeah.
And
they
so
all overlap.
Bro. And so, but a lot of people will be lonely, and want companionship, but not sex. And you know what I'm saying? Where mine is very much, those are the same kind of thing, but not real. But I don't know. It's weird. But trying to like separate those all, and be fine being in any of them without like letting the bubbles reemerge.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah, for sure.
And so it's like do shit like that to help yourself like be in a better mind space. Cause like on top of that, over the pandemic, I like was bummed in the beginning because it wiped my whole calendar that I struggled. Like my last gig, I was supposed to headline Dr. Grins in July, and I booked that in August of 2019. Wow. Like that's how much you're always chasing it in comedy.
Right.
And so that little bit, like I had sliced out a good, like since I moved back home, I'd be home a week or two. Then I'd be like on the road or in New York or in LA, like pow. I was keeping it moving. Like I was broke. I didn't have much, but I was like doing what I needed to do to still feel valid.
Yeah.
And then that all evaporated.
Right.
And so I was supposed to do an album with the label and headline a couple clubs attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, fuck, all right. And then the clubs were like, oh, we'll reschedule you in 2021.
2024. Right.
None of them have even talked to me since then.
But are they still doing shows?
Several of them, yeah. The only clubs that have checked on me are like in Hermosa Beach in DC.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's cool, but it's like also like, damn, I live places. And then and then I had no income. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I like chopped up clips from like Comedy Magic Club and the Cellar and different places that have these on in-house cameras.
Yeah.
And I just chopped my bits down in iMovie, exported them as audio files, and then uploaded them, got them on all the digital shit, and submitted to Sirius. And then now I get a random Sirius check for like enough money that I'm like, how do you buy property? How do you invest in stocks? From just like, it's literally the same amount of money that the government gave you for the assistance, the $600 a week. That's all it is, which honestly is just featuring for a weekend without having to buy airfare and feed yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, here's money without work. It's like universal basic income, basically, randomly.
Right.
Which is what old ass people be living on the
yes.
like my dad could retire now, but he'd only get like $200 a month from his pension. Or he can work for 9 more years and get $500 a month. So you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he's gonna figure out how to build on that and survive. But this is like, oh, just doing this random shit in the middle of a pandemic. I made passive income in perpetuity that I would have lost half of this if I went with the label.
Right.
Like, it's irresponsible. Like, I probably should be a professional and go through shit, but I'm in the middle of nowhere with so I've signed up for Actors Access, which I submit for everything. If it's asked for white people, I still submit. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, fuck it.
And anything that I feel like, oh, I want to try that. And I've gotten at least an audition or 2 a week since I signed up for that. And which is, I just treat that shit like practice. So how can I memorize these lines real quick? How can I figure out these beats? How do I tape? How do I set up my space? And so I get, try to do that type of shit.
Right.
So just do a little bit every day.
Yeah, that's staying positive and keep working. That's literally all we can do right now. Like, even if you don't feel like you're not physically getting paid, like, that's something that in your head, keep thinking that you are. Just keep behaving as if you are. But that's what you do. This is just
you may not be getting paid, but you own the equity of it and the means of production.
Absolutely. So just keep doing that shit. It's gonna come back. Like, this is gonna come back. We're all just, it's a rough patch for not just us, obviously, not just comics, but like everyone took a hit. So it's like, I think just the mentality and staying positive. Meditation really helps. If you haven't done that, start doing that. It is your mindset. And you will attract, it'll come. We just need to take a deep breath and realize that this is temporary.
Yeah, it's temporary, but also it ain't going to change unless, you know what I'm saying? It's this change that you're going to affect is going to be small, and it's going to be something you can participate in, or you can be passive, or you can not participate in.
Right.
But like, that's every moment you have those choices. You know
Absolutely, 100%. Well, Ramon, thank you so much. This was fantastic. It was so good. I miss you, and thank you for taking the time to come to the struggle. Tell people one more time where they can find you online.
BlazerRamon.com. It's also my Instagram, my Twitter, and my Venmo. If you bought that life.
Yeah, send him some money. If you got extra money, just send it to people.
Seriously, like, the way I made those free outdoor shows economically feasible is I had to sign up with Pro Wrestling Tees.
Yeah.
Ron Funk just got them to start doing comedian tees.
Yeah. I remember I talked to some people about that. Yeah.
For over the summer, I made like a couple $100 with that.
Yeah, it's great.
It ain't much, but it allowed me to, like, I wound up paying out almost $700 to comics. I was doing the outdoor park show, and then this arts venue asked me to do a parking lot show there.
Yeah.
And because I was able to do shit from outdoors, we were able to do it for like the summer. And so it's not much, but it was safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I was also respectful. I'm like, all right, if you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine, but y'all are outside and far from each other, so this shit ain't on me.
Right.
And it's once it started getting cold, the dude at the arts venue was like, you can move inside. And I was like,
nah.
Because I can't, at that point, I have to be like, no, I can't have y'all in here without a mask. Because, like, I tried to, if someone comes to the show and then I hear they died.
Yeah, and you're liable. So there's that. But, and there's that. Well, Ramon, thank you again. You guys, thank you for tuning into The Struggle. If you have not subscribed, make sure you do that. I will be posting. I've now started posting these videos on my personal YouTube, so subscribe there. We're on all podcast platforms, so you can just listen to it too if that's your style. Rate and review us on iTunes. And last but not least, tell somebody. If you're listening to this regularly and you're enjoying it, pay it forward and tell somebody. Till next time. Thank you. Bye.